advised.
Because I didn't want to see it. I could hear her calling my name.
Victoria!
I didn't do anything.
At around 3:30 p.m. on April 8, 2009, Tori Stafford had been in line with her schoolmates waiting to get out, but rushed to get her mother's earrings that she had borrowed that day and left in class. She made it back in line with the rest of her classmates when the bell rang. From 3:25 p.m. to 3:32 p.m., Tori walked alone north on 5th Avenue towards her new home on Francis Street. She was the first child Terri-Lynne McClintic saw walking toward her. McClintic struck up a conversation with Tori, telling the girl she had a Shih Tzu dog. Tori told McClintic she had the same kind of dog. McClintic invited her to come and see her dog, so Tori went with her. She was then forced into a back seat and covered with a blanket. When she failed to return home, she was reported missing by her grandmother at 6:04 p.m. She had been kidnapped by Terri-Lynne McClintic and Michael Rafferty. She was later found buried underneath a pile of rocks. She had been raped and murdered. Terri-Lynne McClintic was born in 1990 in Woodstock, Ontario. Her mother was a stripper who didn't want her and gave her away to another stripper named Carol McClintic. Carol McClintic had already lost 2 kids to family services for being an unfit mother who drank a lot, who would fly off the handle for no reason. She also had a revolving door of men in the household. Carol McClintic was a deviant mother, alcoholic, and drug addict. Carol McClintic was also abused by her father growing up emotionally, physically, and sexually, which didn't help matters. Despite all this, she was allowed to adopt Terri-Lynne, even though there were calls to try and stop it, saying Terri-Lynne would be in danger and Carol was mentally unstable. Go figure. At 3 years old, Terri-Lynne McClintic was sweet and innocent, but as the years went on, it slowly disappeared. Terri-Lynne went through 18 years of mental, physical, and sexual abuse and neglect. When she was 8 years old, McClintic started smoking weed, slowly graduating to harder drugs. Thanks to her adoptive mother's lifestyle, she and her mother started shooting OxyContin and Percocets together. Terri-Lynne suffered abuse and neglect her whole young life, which eventually turned her into a monster. Even as a young child, the signs were there. She once put a dog into a microwave until it screamed. She claimed the dog had been attacked by another animal. The dog was put down. She spent a lot of her childhood at 2 foster homes and her teenage years at detention homes. From age 12 to 17, she had been in and out for numerous misdemeanors, such as fighting, and was convicted of assault at least 6 times. By the time she was 18, she was completely out of control. In early 2009, in the months leading up to Tori Stafford's abduction and murder, McClintic was taking antidepressants, popping OxyContin, ecstasy pills, injecting morphine, and smoking weed. McClintic and Michael Rafferty first met by chance at a New Orleans pizza outlet in Woodstock in February 2009. They struck up a conversation while waiting for pizza, and Rafferty, who called her a cute number, offered her a ride home. They sat and chatted in a car in the driveway. Instead of going in the house, McClintic went for a drive with Rafferty. They drove around Woodstock and Ingersoll. They talked about OxyContin. They had sex in the car. In the next few weeks, he showed up at her place regularly and she gave him OxyContin. They also went to the movies, spent the night in a local hotel. Hugs and kisses and pills. McClintic was in love. Michael Rafferty was a player, pill popper, and pedophile. In early 2009, someone named Michael, spelled M-Y-C-H-O-L, Googled underage rape, real underage rape, and real underage rape pictures on his laptop. Between January and April 2009, he also searched keywords like real rape, children for sale, and sales of baby. He also had the movie Gardens of Night on his laptop, a little-known Hollywood movie about the abduction of a pretty blonde girl while she's on her way home from school. Michael was Michael Rafferty. On April 2009, he searched the best program to download child porn and nude preteen. Days prior, Rafferty had asked McClintic if she would ever help him kidnap a little girl, and how would they do it. The OxyContin lovers discussed it in detail. On April 8th, Rafferty wanted to go through with the kidnapping. McClintic was apprehensive, and Rafferty told McClintic, "I knew you were all talk." Not wanting to disappoint the man she loved, she agreed, and they went to Oliver Steffens Elementary School in Woodstock, Ontario. McClintic started talking to the first little girl she seen. They had Shih Tzu dogs in common. McClintic asked her if she wanted to see hers, and the little girl said yes. That little girl was Tori Stafford. When they got to the car, McClintic pushed Tori to the back seat, sat her on the floor and covered her with a blanket. Then they drove off. Rafferty went to a bank machine. Then they stopped at Tim Hortons for coffee and green tea to go. Rafferty then went out to a local drug dealer and got some Percocets. Then they drove to Home Depot in Gulf, Ontario. Terri-Lynne McClintic went inside and bought garbage bags and a hammer. Then they traveled north of Guelph, Ontario to the Mount Forest area. As they were looking for a place to take Tori Stafford, Rafferty began to masturbate as they drove around the area. They found a secluded road and parked the car by a pile of rocks. Michael Rafferty went into the back seat where little Tori Stafford was. As Rafferty began to sexually assault the little girl, McClintic couldn't bear to watch, and with Tori's pleas for help ringing in her ears, she walked away from the vehicle to a section of a fence nearby. From that vantage point, she could clearly see what was happening. Michael Rafferty, naked from the waist down, through the open door of the rear passenger seat, having sex with 8-year-old Tori on his lap. After Tori was raped, Tori was put on the ground beside the car. Rafferty then began to kick her violently. Terri-Lynne McClintic said she could hear her screams, but then they got fainter and fainter and she began to moan. Michael Rafferty placed a garbage bag over her head so there would be no blood splatter, and hit her with a hammer until she fell silent. Rafferty told McClintic to come help. McClintic said Tori was in the fetal position, moaning and still alive. McClintic then held open the garbage bags for Rafferty to put Tori in. McClintic said the only place that she saw blood on Tori was in the groin area. Then they buried her beside a rock pile and covered her with rocks. Rafferty then washed Tori Stafford's blood off his genitals with water from a plastic bottle. Tori Stafford's mom, Terry McDonald, was high on Oxycontin the day her daughter went missing. She was lying on the couch at home and did not report her daughter missing. Tori Stafford's grandmother had to report her missing at 6:04 p.m. It took all of 11 seconds to kidnap Tori Stafford, but the abduction was captured on camera. When police released the footage, they received tips that the woman was Terri-Lynne McClintic. Terry McDonald even called the police saying it was McClintic. She explained she had contact with McClintic on 2 occasions, when she went to buy Oxycontin from McClintic's mother and to discuss dog breeding. Tori Stafford's case was even featured in the April 25, 2009 episode of America's Most Wanted. Police followed up on the information and found McClintic had an outstanding warrant for breach of probation order. They arrested her for the infraction and interviewed her about her whereabouts on the day Victoria disappeared. She denied knowing anything. While in a Jeunesse detention center in London for breaching her probation orders, Michael Rafferty phoned her almost every day and visited her. She told him she would take the blame if it ever came to that. She remembers telling him, "I'm just an 18-year-old junkie anyway, so I'll take the fall for everything." The last time she saw him at Jeunesse was May 12, 2009. She remembers touching his face. He looked up and laughed and he said, "You'll do anything for a little bit of love, eh?" McClintic began to hear rumors that Rafferty was sleeping around. McClintic was interviewed again. McClintic insisted she had nothing to do with Tori's disappearance, but by the end of the 3.5-hour interview, the heartbroken McClintic confessed. McClintic drew a map of the location of Tori's body. She wanted to help find Tori's remains. So that night, Detective Staff Sergeant Jim Smith and 3 other officers drove her around as she pointed out familiar landmarks. Rafferty was arrested that same day and interrogated. He denied any involvement. When Michael Rafferty's cell phone records showed a call from April 8, 2009 near Mount Forest, Ontario, Detective Staff Sergeant Jim Smith went for a drive in the area, and acting on a hunch based on what McClintic's map had described, he turned down a rural laneway, and on July 19th, he discovered Tori's remains. Stafford's body was naked from the waist down, wearing only a Hannah Montana t-shirt and a pair of butterfly earrings that she had borrowed from her mother. The lower half of Tori Stafford's body was badly decomposed. Terri-Lynne McClintic and Michael Rafferty were both tried separately. Terri-Lynne McClintic pled guilty to first-degree murder, but before her sentencing, impact statements were heard from family members. "The emptiness is overwhelming," Terry McDonald said in court. "I miss her so much that many times, if I didn't have my son, I probably would have taken my own life because the agony of not having her with me is so great." The girl's father, Rodney Stafford, asked aloud the questions he longed to ask his daughter, questions for which there would be no longer answers. "Hey Victoria, are you ready to go to the prom? Victoria, are you ready to graduate? Are you ready to walk down the aisle, Victoria?" Terri-Lynne McClintic then threw up in a wastepaper basket. She was sentenced to life and is being held in Grand Valley Institution for Women in Kitchener, Ontario. At Michael Rafferty's trial, Dr. Michael Polinen, who conducted the autopsy, gave evidence that Tori had 16 fractured ribs, a 15-centimeter cut to the liver, and her head split in many places. That day, Rafferty showed up in a purple shirt. Purple was Tori's favorite color. Tori's family looked aghast. Rodney Stafford, the dead girl's father, left the courtroom. On May 11, 2012, Michael Rafferty was found guilty of kidnapping, sexual assault, and first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years.
I was going to the methadone clinic. I was trying to get clean. I was trying to get my life together.
Because I didn't want to see it. I could hear her calling my name.
I didn't do anything.
Yeah, walk away like usual. Victoria!
Welcome to my channel. This is Mr. Scary. Hope you enjoy the show.
Thank you.